These familiar faces. Sorry. Hi, I'll repeat that. I'm Kat Yamaguchi. I'm the Program Director for New Directions Career Center, and we're delighted to be here in partnership with Dress for Success. We have a wonderful, close relationship with Dress. Many women benefit from both of our organizations and help strengthen both of our organizations. So we love working with Dress for Success and Bridget. Our mission is to uplift and empower women to achieve and maintain self-sufficiency and to be the spark that encourages and motivates every woman to live to her full potential. And that includes us staff members. We're regularly challenging one another to continue living to our fullest potential and growing and developing. So we take that to heart. We're going to introduce ourselves to you and let you know a little bit about New Directions at the end of the presentation. In case you're not familiar with our work and our services and what we can do, we'd be happy to work with you in achieving your career plans and what you're hoping to accomplish. I'm going to pass the mic off to Jamie Phillips. Jamie Phillips is our employment consultant, very specialized in all areas related to finding job opportunities, getting those job opportunities, and keeping those. So she has a broad network of amazing employer partners in the community and a deep background in helping candidates find the right fit. So Jamie, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Kat. As Kat said, I'm Jamie Phillips. I'm the employment consultant at New Directions, as well as classroom instructor during our classes. So I'm thrilled to be here today. It's great to see some familiar names and faces. That always makes me feel comfortable. Today, we're going to talk about the do's and don'ts of interviewing. I want this to be very participative. So as I'm going along, if you have questions, feel free to either chat those, or we're a small enough group, you can kind of just raise your hands and say, hey, and ask your question, because chances are what you're thinking about, others may be as well when it comes to interviewing. So first, I want to give you a little overview as far as what New Directions does, our organization. Our program approach is that we take a holistic approach to career development. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we have a 4-stage process. We take people from who am I, and we do that through self-assessments. We work with visioning, career assessments, identifying any values, barriers, or resources out there, personal enrichment conversations, and understanding and valuing yourself, to exploration through career and labor market research, learning to use people as resources, employer and service organization panels, access to tools and opportunities and strategies for personal success. So once we know who I am and what you want to do, we help you with goal setting, including decision making, planned use of resources, committing to change, realistic and measurable goals, and action-oriented steps to finally, how do I achieve it? And we do that through self-marketing. Self-marketing is a great big topic that encompasses looking at open positions, completing job applications, writing resumes, cover letters, networking, to interviewing, to that self-promotion, and helping with salary negotiation and your career management. And today we're going to cover some pieces and parts of all of that. So again, if you have questions, please stop me and ask me. The first main program that New Directions has to offer is our YES program. Those of you who are familiar with us remember a time way back before COVID when we used to actually come into the building and sit in the classroom for long days and about 2 weeks. We pivoted once COVID hit. We still needed to serve the community at large, and we've been doing that virtually for the last 15 months. We just completed, Kat, correct me if I'm wrong, our 4th YES group of ladies since we started this. Yeah.
Four sets of 8 cohorts.
Yes, of 8 cohorts. So it's been a great experience. Our YES overview is that it is a 6-week course. designed by women for women. We cover career exploration and goal setting, self-marketing, financial planning, and employer connections. This program, while it is 6 weeks, we meet twice a week for about 2.5 hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We've been able to have a morning session and an afternoon session. Our next group will start August the 17th. And then after that, our October class, which will be the final one of the year, it'll take us through November. We are going to do a hybrid model with one of those with that morning session. In what that means to you is that the first or 3 of those classes will actually be live in person at New Directions Career Center. So I don't know about the rest of my team, but I'm chomping at the bit to get back in the classroom and see human beings in person. So while this has worked out great, we're excited to try the hybrid model, and then we will see what 2022 brings to us. So if you are interested in this YES program, please contact us at New Directions and we will share further information and get you registered. New Directions always is offering new resource events as well as services. We have on Wednesday mornings, we have virtual career portals with one-off career-oriented or self-compassion topics. We offer some of those Wednesdays at lunchtime meetings, feature recruiters or employers in Central Ohio. We feature Meet a Resource events with our community partners. We do have a computer lab available and open at New Directions Career Center. Again, we just ask that you call and schedule time to come in. We want to maintain social distancing as best we can, but we have that service to be made available to you. As far as individualized services go at New Directions, we offer employment services, which is handled by yours truly. We also have 2 licensed career counselors on staff to help with bigger picture strategizing, exploration type of things. We have a contractor who handles our mediation and support services. About quarterly, we also partner with the Financial Planning Association in Central Ohio, and they send volunteers to meet with our clients for any type of financial consulting questions that you might have. I believe we have one coming up, Kat, on
Wednesday, July 7th in the morning. It's a half-hour consultation. You can ask questions about retirement planning, student loan planning, if you are thinking about school or you've got a kid thinking about school, to just everyday kind of savings questions, that kind of thing. So it's really your window of time to talk to an expert for half an hour. And on Wednesday, July 7th, we have some appointments still available for that morning between 10:30 and noon. So email us if you're interested, and I'll put the email in the chat, and we can schedule them for one of those half-hour free appointments.
We also can help with individual assistance as well as scholarships. So there's a multitude of services and opportunities that we are able to offer you. Again, the best way to find out more is just contact us and tell us what you need. So today we're going to discuss interviewing. We're going to talk about the purpose. Why on earth do we have to do this? The different stages of interviews, what to do, what to bring, and what not to do. We'll do a little practice with something called the START method. We'll talk about overcoming objections and how to do that. And then we'll also end up with salary negotiation tips and thoughts there. So I'll reach out and I will just ask for a show of hands, or you can chat it. How many of you are actively interviewing or soon will be interviewing? Okay. So interviewing, when I ask people how they feel about it, usually I get a resounding, I don't like it. One of our participants in our last program was very, very much greatly disliked interviewing, and she made that known several times throughout the class. The good news is we were able to change her mindset just a little bit by the end of yesterday. So my goal today is to help you understand the pieces and parts of interviewing and hopefully help you see that it doesn't have to be as stressful, as nerve-wracking as it often can be for people. And what I like to start out by saying about interviewing is that if you get really nervous about it, it's a necessary evil, right? We all have to do it, right, to get these jobs that we're looking for. Interviewing is nothing more than a conversation between two professionals. You are trying to find out about them, and they are trying to find out about you. And if you start to think of it that way, that I am having a professional conversation with another human being, hopefully that will kind of level the playing field or put you on equal grounds, right? You have something they need, and you're trying to help them see that you are the best possible fix to that problem that they're experiencing. So hopefully that will kind of help set your mind a little more at ease. And as a tip, those employers who are interviewing are just as nervous as you are for different reasons, right? You've got a lot on the line, but so do they. They have a need that they need filled. Someone has gotten promoted, someone has left the company, someone has not come back from leave, someone has taken another job, maybe they've even gotten terminated. So those employers have a hole that they need to fill. And they typically need to do it sooner than later because there's only so long that the rest of their team is going to be able to fill in those gaps or take on additional responsibilities. They also need to find the best person so that they can get their team back up and running in as seamless a manner as possible. So think of it that way. They are nervous just like you are. First, I want to talk about the purpose of the interview. So, what is the employer looking for? Well, they're looking at your abilities, they're looking at your fit for the job, and they're looking at your fit within the company or the team. Are you a good fit for that culture or for that environment? On the flip side, you are evaluating the company and the position to see if it is a right fit for your personality and your skills or values. Your goal is to get the best possible job that you can. So, what are the different stages? Well, typically, the first is the screening stage. This is the point where you've submitted your resume and your application, you've gotten a phone call, right? That's the first thing. You've heard back from that company or you've gotten an email. Typically, the screening process involves a phone screen. And I'm going to guess that most of you at some point have had a telephone interview along the way. This is probably not going to be more than maybe 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes at best for that phone interview. Few things that I would encourage you to do if you know that this is happening is if that call comes from that employer, make sure that you're in a good place for that, right? If you're driving in the car, if your kids are in the background, if you're at work or the grocery store or wherever you are, and you recognize that call or maybe don't recognize that call, it's okay to let it go to voicemail. We live in a world where most times we rarely get the person on the first try. Few tips on that. Make sure that your voicemail box is set up. So make sure that they can indeed leave a message. Make sure it's not full. And make sure that your voicemail message is professional in nature. So, hi, you've reached Jamie Phillips. I'm sorry I missed your call. Please leave me a message and I'll get back to you. Avoid any sayings or music playing in the background or anything like that. Again, let that call go to voicemail. If you suspect it's an employer, get home, get in front of your computer, get your ducks in a row, figure out which job it is that they're calling about if you've applied for multiple jobs, and then call them back when you can speak without distractions. Schedule that phone interview. You're going to do this a little bit of homework, a little bit of research, but the purpose of that screening interview is to kind of check the boxes of the basic skills and requirements that they have listed on the job posting. Once you have had that phone interview, the goal is to get an in-person interview or virtual interview in the world we're living in today. That selection interview, as it is called, is usually between you and the person that you would be working with or reporting to. And then finally, the last step of the process is that hiring or that offer interview. Maybe it involves coming back and meeting with other people that you're going to be working with in the team or in the department, or some higher level representative at the company just for their blessing. You won't always get an offer on the spot, but you can hope and assume that if all goes well with that hiring step, that you will be receiving an offer from them. Any questions so far on any of those steps or stages? All good? Okay.
Yep, all good.
Okay, thanks, Ollie. So some different types of interviews that you might encounter. One is the one-to-one interview, and that's where it's you and the employer. Another one that I like to mention is the panel or the committee interview. Have any of you ever had that, or maybe assume that that might be in your future? Ollie's saying yes. Okay. Jackie? Yeah. Did you have any questions, Jacqueline?
It was horrible.
Horrible. Okay. Tell us why.
Intimidating.
Why was it horrible? Please do share.
It could just be a little intimidating. But that was also years ago. So but it could be intimidating. You don't know which direction it's gonna come from, what it's gonna be. You really just can't predict what, you can kind of, when it's one-on-one, you can kind of, predict the mojo a little bit. But I mean, I got through it. I believe I even got the job, but it was still like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it can be intimidating because it feels like it's you against the world, right? Or it can, I've heard people say it's like a firing squad, right? These questions are just coming at me. Do yourself a favor, and when these interviews are getting scheduled by the human resource person or whomever is handling the scheduling, ask them, who will I be meeting with? And if they just give you one name, maybe also say, will I be possibly meeting with anybody else? Let's hope that that employer is going to be upfront and honest with you and let you know that, well, actually, it will be a panel or a committee interview, or there will be multiple people that you're meeting with. Doesn't change it, right? But at least you can be in the right mindset of that. There's a couple of reasons why those employers would schedule. Jessica, do you have a question? Or just, okay. You may be interviewing for a job that requires you to come in contact with different departments or different people. And so they're all going to have a little say-so or weigh in on who you are and helping make that decision. So it's a time-saving thing. Rather than bring you back multiple times, right, for 3 or 4 or 5 different interviews, they're going to bring you in one time so that you can meet all the parties involved. You may meet all those parties at the same time, so them sitting on one side of the table and you on the other, or you may meet with them individually throughout the course of a few hours. But if they don't tell you about this, make sure that you ask so that you can get yourself in the right mindset. They're looking for, those people may be looking for different things depending on what their role is. But again, be yourself, be confident. Try to get the fact that you're saving yourself time and trips coming back to the company, and it's a good way for you to all meet each other in one full swoop. So that's a little about the panel or the committee. And then finally, the group interview is a situation where maybe there are multiple candidates interviewing for the same job. So in that case, the employer is bringing everyone in, they're asking similar questions. And from the employer standpoint, this allows them to see maybe who has those leadership qualities, who stands out in the crowd, which will help increase your chances for getting called back for those one-to-one or individual interviews. Any questions at all on the different types of interviews? Sounds like you've all experienced a little bit of all of them. And if you haven't, chances are you probably will. So now hopefully you know a little bit more than you did before. So the do's and don'ts of or importance of professional attire. I like to touch on this a little bit because typically I get people who ask me, what should I wear or what is expected? And with the virtual world, this has thrown us in even more of a tailspin, right? But dressing in a professional attire communicates that you're part of that team, that you understand the appearance expectations on the job, that you understand any safety regulations that there might be. You aim to make a good first impression. You care for and respect yourself and others. For the interview, I am certainly not encouraging or saying to anyone that you have to go out and buy a whole new outfit. Now, with this group, we're at a little bit of a benefit or an advantage because Dress for Success is going to make sure that you are ready to roll, right? They are not going to let you go in looking anything but the best. But in general, I always encourage people dress a notch above what you think that work environment might be. Because again, you only get that one chance to make a good first impression. You can always back it down, right, as to what you wear once you get the job, but you can't change that first impression that the employer has. And so in most cases today, if you're actually going into an office, it's usually generally pretty business casual, right? Nice pair of pants or top. So for that interview, you might just throw on a jacket or a sweater or a conservative looking kind of dress type of thing. But again, Dress for Success is going to make sure that you are looking like $1,000,000 when you walk in there. You don't have to dress that way maybe all the time. But again, I know for myself, it makes me feel a little more on my game than when I'm sitting in my sweatpants, right? Or walking in jeans or something more casual. So that's just a little bit about dress. So some do's before, once you've got this interview scheduled. Great, now I've got it scheduled. Now the nerves start kicking in, right? You start getting a little bit nervous about this. So do make sure you've done your homework on that company. Make sure that you've looked at their website. If you have a presence on LinkedIn, do some homework on LinkedIn by searching out the person that you're going to be meeting with or persons or that and as well as that company. That's going to introduce you to maybe other people that work for that organization, maybe even people who do the type of job that you're interviewing for. So do your homework. Most employers, one of their first questions that they're going to ask you is going to be, what do you know about us? And in my experience with working with employers, one quick way to eliminate someone from consideration is if they don't know anything about the organization or the position that you're interviewing for. So do your homework. Research salary. Many times, those employers do not list the salary ranges on their job postings unless they are a public entity. So the state or the city, university, something along those lines, they have to list salary ranges. But ABC company does not legally have to list that. So make sure if the salary range is not listed that you have done your research. There are a variety of different sites, salary.com, Glassdoor, Ohio Means Jobs, I think even has a resource on there that will help you figure out appropriate salary ranges for pretty much any type of job that you would be interviewing for. So you want to go in knowing what you need to have or what you need to make and what is competitive for that type of position. More to come on salary negotiation. The job description. Make sure that you understand that job description as thoroughly as you can. Now, not all job descriptions are created equal. Sometimes there's not a lot of information. So then you owe it to yourself to maybe search out other similar types of jobs to see if there isn't more information that you can get. Do prepare yourself for the questions that they may ask you. At New Directions, I do have sample interview questions that employers can potentially ask that if you are interested in that, please just shoot us a message and we will make sure that we share that information with you. But think about the types of questions that may be asked and kind of practice those responses ahead of time. Your talking points. It is more than acceptable to go into an interview with a notebook or a portfolio in which you have things like that job posting, extra copies of your resume, and maybe some cheat sheets, right? With some talking points. You may have practiced, you may have rehearsed, you may feel like you've got this down, and then the littlest thing can throw you off your game. So if it helps, take some talking notes or your cheat sheet in with you. In the virtual world that we've been living in, the benefit of that is you're sitting at your kitchen or dining room table or a desk, and you can have that information spread out amongst you. Just make sure it's organized so that you can get access the talking points or the information that you're looking for quickly. Your questions. You yourself need to have questions. At the end of that interview, that employer is going to say to you, what questions do you have? If you don't have any, that's going to be a sign to them that you may not be interested in their organization. And so my rule of thumb when I'm working one-to-one with clients is have about 5 questions prepared ahead of time, assuming that some of those questions may get answered along the way. You also can take notes during the course of that interview. Jot things down that you don't want to forget. You may not feel that it's appropriate to ask a question when they're talking or involved in sharing descriptions with you, but you can always circle back around at the end and say, you know, earlier you mentioned this. Can you give me a little bit more information on that? Or can you expand upon that? So asking questions lets them know that you're interested. Oops, sorry about that. And finally, you want to know your route, know where you're going. Now, if you're doing this virtually, that's not as big a deal, right? You don't necessarily have to plan for travel time and parking and that kind of thing. But if you are going to an in-person interview, I like to suggest to people that you do a dry run. Hopefully you've got a couple days notice before that interview is going to take place so that you might actually make the trip at the time that your interview is scheduled so that you know what the traffic's like. And again, if the parking isn't close by, you know how far you're going to have to walk or pay to park or whatever the case may be. So make sure that you know that route. Any questions on any of that so far?
Well, hey, Jamie, it's Danielle. I did
Hi,
put a
Danielle.
question in the chat, but I can read it out for you.
Okay, sure.
Can you give us examples of illegal interview questions that they're not legally allowed to ask you, and to what to look for?
Sure. Great question. I would say any personal oriented questions, right? How old are you? How many children do you have? What is your religion? I would even go so far in this day and age as to ask you about any political beliefs or feelings, any kind of health questions, anything personable. if those questions are asked of you, I guess my first response might be, can you tell me what that has to do with my ability to do the job? If you don't feel that that's going to hinder your ability to do the job, then they shouldn't be asking you that question, right?
Well, they shouldn't be asking the question anyways.
Anyways, they shouldn't be, right? But if they do,
interviewing.
you can kind of fire back at that. Do you have specific examples, Danielle, of questions that you've been asked that you're wondering if it was legal or not?
Yeah, I do. This was years ago, but it was for a larger corporation, and she was asking me about certain family questions, and I was like, okay, this feels like you should not be asking me this.
Yeah.
Because it was one of those things where I think she asked me if I had a family or this or that, and I was like, wow, I don't know how I should even proceed on with the answering to that question.
Right. Because you don't want to walk down a path that is going to create question in their mind, right? But again, if you don't, I mean, you're an intelligent person, and if you don't feel that that is a fair question being asked of you, ask them, why do you ask? I think that's a fair response.
Yeah, and it really kind of opens up their liability the second someone's not trained well on interviewing.
Yeah.
And thank you.
You have another question, Jamie, in the
Yeah.
chat from Teresa about if they ask about gaps in employment, like reasons for gaps in employment.
Yep. So we're going to talk about overcoming objections in just a couple of minutes, but I'll touch on that. Be truthful and be honest. If you have a gap of employment, explain it, be brief, to the point, and you're going to have to let them know what the benefit of that gap, if you will, was. What did you gain from that, even if you weren't getting a paycheck? So for example, if someone looked at my resume, they would see that I had worked for one employer for 15 years, and then I had about a 9-year gap before I started working for New Directions. I chose to stay home when my daughter was young. However, in that period of time, I volunteered at different organizations. I also volunteered at New Directions, which is how I ended up getting my job at New Directions. And so I'm going to tell an employer that it was a priority for me at that time to stay home with my child. Or maybe you were taking care of a relative. Maybe you were going to school. Whatever the case may be, share your story. Talk about what you gained from that. In that time, here's what I did. I volunteered at different organizations. I took on leadership roles in different groups that I became a part of. I was able to, handle budgeting and multitasking at home. Whatever additional skills you gained in that period of time, all can be relatable or beneficial to that job at hand. And you just need to tell your story, be honest and upfront, and then move forward.
So Teresa, though, just to be on the topic of legality, it is legal for an employer to ask you to address gaps in your work history. How much you disclose and how much personal information you want to share in addressing that is completely up to you. So, in Jamie's instance, she could say, I wanted to care for my daughter, but if she wanted to not include the fact that she has a child in her response, she could just say, I was prioritizing my family, and no, I'm in a different place or something. You know what I mean? Like however much you want to disclose, like you don't know anybody, your personal health history, you don't know anybody, your disability status, none of that is something you need to share if you don't want to. It is legal for them to ask you. So anticipating if that might happen, you might want to think about what you're comfortable disclosing, what you're not, and it's really up to you. Does that address what was in your mind with that question, Teresa?
Well, I was going to ask, what about something that's related to a work injury that you had experienced? I had experienced a work-related injury, so that would be part of my gap. in my employment. So how would I really explain that if I were asked about, the gap in employment?
Yeah, again, that kind of goes back to your personal health history is your own. So it's really up to you how much you want to explain of that. If it could be the thing that you're concerned the employer would start wondering, is that a lingering thing? Is that something that would impact them in this new position? You might want to be more cautious in what you disclose. If it's something that's completely resolved at this point in time, you might feel more comfortable saying, I had a short-term injury that I was recovering from. I'm completely healed now, ready to work. You know what I mean? It's kind of to you how. I don't want to dig into the circumstances. So it's sort of up to you. What's the right way to position yourself for the opportunity you're looking for?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Good questions, though. Any others? Okay, I'll move on then. What to bring? A couple of tips as reminders. Obviously, you want to bring your resume. If you have been tailoring your resumes to different jobs that you're applying for, make sure that you are bringing the resume that you submitted with the application. I have a lot of clients who tailor or tweak their resumes based on the positions. And so if they've asked if you have extra copies, you want to make sure that you bring the version that they originally saw. References. Those are pretty valuable. When you've completed an application, you've probably already had to list contact information for former employers or supervisors. They might be the same people or they may be additional people. It's always good to have a list of references that you can share with an employer. They could be former employers, supervisors, they could be coworkers, they could be people who know your character well, with relation to what your work style might be like. But I will tell you, if an employer asks for references and you can provide them with a list of people that they can contact, that will really bump you up the totem pole in their eyes, because references are super hard these days for employers to obtain. Most employers today will only share the fact that, yes, they did work for me from this time to that time, and maybe this is the position. So if you can provide an employer with insight from another human being who can speak to your character and your skills, that's going to really get you some brownie points there. And so I will typically encourage people to think of maybe 3 to 4 people that could speak professionally on your behalf that you could provide to an employer if they asked for it. Make sure that you have a good knowledge of your work history. So make sure that you can clearly speak to, from this time to this time, I was with ABC Company. And so make sure that you understand that and you have that down pat if they're asking you about it. Make sure that you bring a copy of that job posting with you so that you can refer to it. Maybe you've made some notes or questions that you might have. Make sure that you bring anything else that they may have asked you for. When you're getting that interview scheduled, ask them, is there anything else I should be prepared to bring with me? Maybe they want sort of proof of certification of some sort or education. And so make sure that you ask for that before the interview. And finally, thank you notes. Sometimes I'll have people ask me, should I send a thank you note? And my response is always, always, always going to be yes. Some people may think it's a little old fashioned, but I can tell you that I have seen employers who were torn between 2 candidates go with the candidate who took the time to send the thank you note or email them. Pre-COVID, I had heard from employers that they often like to get a good old-fashioned traditional thank you note. To them, it demonstrated that you actually had to go get the card and write the note and put a stamp on it. In today's world, most of the communication that we get is all electronic. So to get something like that in the mail at your office really just shows that you've gone the extra mile, and they like that. Now, since COVID, and since most people have not been working in their offices or on a very limited basis, it may be a delay for that employer to get that thank you note. So my rule of thumb is always send a thank you note electronically through email. It lets them know that you're interested. Maybe you can reiterate some of the positives that you felt that you could bring to the position. It keeps your name fresh in their mind. It shows good follow-up. If you still want to do a thank you note, you can always do that, but you will know that they've gotten your message. And I think a good rule of thumb is to make sure that you get that thank you note out within 24 hours of your interview. A little bit on that. Some don'ts. We've talked about all the things you should do. So here's some reminders on what you want to avoid or try to avoid. Don't ask questions like, how much time do I get off? At least in the first or second interview. Wait till you've gotten the offer and then you can talk vacation and time off. If you're asking a question like this, or what is the, pay or benefits, to them, that sounds like it's self-serving and that you're not as interested in the opportunity or the company. So that information will get shared with you in the appropriate time. So again, no talk about salary or benefits. Let them bring that up first. Don't bring beverages in. And if I were you, if you're offered something to drink, I know myself, I'm afraid I'm going to spill it or drip it, and that would not be good. And that would really throw me off my game. So leave the drinks out the door. Don't ever answer your phone. In fact, if you're afraid your phone's going to ring, turn it off or leave it in the car or in someplace else other than where you are. If a phone call is that important, you probably shouldn't be on that interview at that particular time. So make sure that your phone is off. Try to avoid any negatives. You always want to be positive. Columbus is a large city, but you don't know who knows who. And so if you worked for the most horrible person in the world, you will have to figure out a way to paint that in a more positive light. Certainly we at New Directions are happy to help you with that answer, but you don't want to speak negatively about anything in an interview. And oversharing. Try to avoid giving any more information than what they're asking for. Any questions before we go into some different methods of answering questions or situations or things that are on your mind with regards to what we've talked about?
No, I just want to add that Columbus is the smallest big city I've ever met.
You are correct, Jessica. You are correct. Yeah. Has anybody ever heard of this START method? Do a show of hands. Has anyone heard of something called behavioral-based interviewing? Okay, Danielle has heard about that. Okay. This is a way of questioning that human resource professionals and employers have been trained to do at some point in time. It is a way that they are listening for a certain process of how you answer a question. And so you think, oh gosh, this is one more thing that I need to worry about. But the reason that we tell you this is, or share this with you, is so that you can have a leg up on the competition. So while this particular title may not sound familiar to you, have you been asked a question that goes something like this? Tell me about a time when ... And those dots might be, tell me about a time when you had to deal with a difficult person, or you, whatever the case may be. Yes, I'm seeing heads nodding, right? And this can be a tricky question, right? Because sometimes people can give just minimal information. Sometimes we draw a blank and don't know where to start. And sometimes we talk and talk and talk and talk, and we lose our audience. So the START method essentially means this. You want to describe the situation. You want to talk about what tasks or what needed to be done. What action did you take? What was the result of your action? And finally, how can I tie that in back to the position at hand? So I'm going to give you a quick example. And as you're preparing for interviews, you may want to think about some situations that you could use either from work experience or even real life when that employer says to you, tell me about a time when. So my example is the situation is that I am a customer service representative. The task at hand was that I had a customer who called in that was upset because they had waited more than 2 weeks for a reply from a sales representative about a question that they had about a product. So, customer calls in upset. I now have to figure out what to do. So, what was my thought process? Well, I apologized. I gathered all the information or details that I could get, and then I passed them along to the sales representative who took the initial order for them. What I found out was that it was a combination of wrong cell phone number and a generic email address that was being used, and the information did not get to the right person in a timely manner. So I found this out. What we decided to do was we let the client know what held things up. We apologized for it. We offered them a discount if they would reorder their item. They did. The results were that they not only reordered, but they wrote a positive review online and continued to do business with our company. And so the tie-in or the theme here was that I know my customer service experience and problem-solving skills will serve me well in the position you're looking to fill. My goal is to improve the customer experience and help you retain long-term client relationships. So you want to tell a little bit of a story to this employer based on an example that you've lived, and let them see obviously what your thought process is and how your actions became a benefit to your past employer and how it would benefit them. Any questions on this? And you may have had situations where you've done some or part of this, but now you know kind of the thing that what those employers are listening for in your particular answer. Couple of tips on video interviewing. As I'm guessing, some of you have either done it or will do it. So with regards to that, make sure first and foremost that your internet connection is strong. We can't ever guarantee 100% we're not going to have a problem. Power goes out, right? We're at the mercy of the utilities or the weather or whatever. Make sure that you have a backup plan. At any given time when I'm on Zoom, I have my phone usually handy, which has wireless internet. I also typically have my iPad nearby so that if something goes on with my laptop or the internet, I have a plan B. Make sure that you exchange phone numbers so that if indeed that connection goes bad or there's a problem, you can at the very least call them and let them know what's going on. Make sure it's quiet, make sure you have good lighting, dress professionally. The beauty of interviewing from home and virtually is you only need to worry about what's happening from your chest up, right? And so you can be in your cozy pants or pajamas or whatever you're dealing with, but make sure that it's a positive impression, just like you would make if you were going in person. And finally, arrive early. So even if you're doing it from home through the computer, always try to log on about 10 minutes or so ahead of time, even if you're just sitting in that waiting room, just like you would if you were actually going to the employer's office. So I did want to touch real briefly. I know that we are coming to the end of our time, but we had talked about overcoming objections. Overcoming objections is your ability to effectively address that potential employer's concerns that they may have before they get a chance to be concerned. So this is a matter of recognizing what I'll call those red flags from their perspective, and through your answers, you remove any concern. So before going into that interview, look at your resume, look at your application. And if you put on that employer's hat and say, if I were interviewing me, what questions would I have? Right? So these objections can feel very scary. However, look at them as opportunities. If they're asking you a question, that indicates that they're interested. And this is giving you a chance to sell yourself and overcome whatever that concern may be. So anticipate what those questions are going to be. As the example we used before, gaps of employment, that's going to be a normal question that an employer is going to ask. Maybe why'd you leave your last company, or why are you looking to leave your employer? I see here that you had worked in this type of job and this is a different job. So anticipate what those questions are and prepare what your response might be. The more you say it, the more comfortable you're going to feel with your response. You don't want to get defensive. They're just asking you a question. So again, it's not the Spanish Inquisition. They just have a question. Be honest, again, as honest as you feel comfortable being. Be direct and always emphasize the benefits of what you gained from that experience. With a minute or two that we have here on this before we wrap up, any other specific questions that any of you have had, or situations that you've been asked about that you struggled with, or that you are concerned you might struggle with? Jessica, okay, go ahead, Ollie.
Well, in regards to make sure you take a copy of your resume, that is a great idea. Yesterday I had an interview and I thought I had ink. I did not have ink, and I emailed the document as a Google Doc, but the interviewer did not receive the email. So we were interviewing with no resume, and she had no, so make sure you have copies of your resume with you.
Good thought. Yeah, very good idea. Salary negotiation. This can be a huge topic. We could spend more than an hour on this with questions, but a few things to keep in mind. Make sure, again, as we mentioned before, that you've done your homework on what that salary range should be, what is competitive. Let them bring up money. I was taught way back when in my training that the first person who speaks typically about money usually loses. So let them bring up money before you do. Know what you need. Know that I'm going into an interview and I know I can't go below a penny earning X. If you take a penny earning less, then you're going to be stressed because you're going to be thinking that you're not going to be able to make ends meet or pay your rent or keep the lights on, and you're going to be continuing to look for another job. So do have a firm understanding of what your budget needs are and stick to your guns. Sell yourself, demonstrate your worth, and do consider any of the other benefits that they may offer. Maybe the medical benefit package is outstanding. Maybe it's 5 minutes from home and travel time isn't going to be a big deal. Maybe it's work from home and that could be a benefit. So you want to review, the whole package. So be aware of budget constraints for them and yourself. Review those other factors. Know what you need. Take time to decide. You don't have forever, but at least within 24 hours, be able to get back to that employer with your answer, yes or no, and accept with gratitude. And that is, I'm very excited about this opportunity. I can't wait to get started for you. Or if it's not the right fit and doesn't check all the boxes that you need, I really appreciate the offer. However, at this time, I'm going to have to decline. Maybe tell them why. Maybe there's some room for further negotiation. But regardless, you've left it on a positive note And if another opportunity comes along in that organization that they feel is a good fit, they will probably consider you before they start the whole process over again. So today, again, we talked about a lot of things in a little short period of time, but hopefully you got a few tips on what is important as far as interviewing goes. Any questions or takeaways or things that you would love more information on that we could always talk about another time?
I just think it would be a good idea for companies to just put that money on out there at the beginning so we don't have to play this back and forth game. Gas is too high to be going around interviewing with everybody. And and their rate may just be way too low for you. So I think you guys get out of that whole charade. Just tell me what money looks like right now.
I know. And sometimes that will come to light in that initial phone screen, Ali. They may ask you what your range is, and you can always say, I understand your range to be between this and that, and I would fall somewhere in between. So, going in, or, you didn't post a salary range. Would you mind sharing what the range is to make sure that we're not wasting each other's time? And you can kind of pose it that way to make sure. And then again, get through the process, prove your value. Maybe they're able to come up a little bit for you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, ladies. So I have to hurry to get to my appointment.
Yay. So again, these are some of the services that we can make available to you. If you would like additional information on any of that, call us or email us and we will get back to you. Again, we are recruiting for that YES program starting in August. So if it sounds like a good fit for you, by all means, we would love to talk to you about that and set a spot aside available for you. We will have a survey that we're going to share. We would welcome your feedback. We can't improve upon what we do without your valuable input and thoughts. So please take a couple of minutes to fill out that, and we will welcome that. Again, I appreciate your time today for a Friday afternoon, although it's kind of dreary out, so I'm not competing with the sunshine this afternoon today. And we would love to work with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to say, Jamie and Kat, they both know me, so I would advocate for your program. I just graduated from it yesterday, so it was a lot of healthy insight, professional insight. I learned a lot from it. So if you haven't done it and you're in that mode where you're looking for additional professional assistance, that might be a good option for you.
Thank you, Danielle.
Danielle is our resource queen.
Yes.
All right.
Well, if you don't have any other questions, again, thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Kat, for your time. Always delivering awesome content to our sisters, which is much appreciated. And ladies, I thank you for joining us on this Friday. Hope the Rain Man's not tapping you on your shoulder like he is me. It's a few hours to go, but wishing you all a safe, I can't say that enough here in Columbus with this climate, but wishing all of you beauties a safe and healthy weekend. Again, you will receive the PowerPoint sometime following this presentation. And then Jamie and Kat, just one question. To get out that survey, do you need me to send over all the participants' email addresses?
That'd be great. And then we can just send the Survey Monkey link out.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, ladies, take time to fill it out.
Yes, and take time for you. Practice some self-compassion this weekend.
Yes.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Holly.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Jerry. Bye,
Bye.
Jessica.
Good to see you too.
And Bridget, we can at some point in time talk about the next time we're doing the thing with the